So it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest, Travis Soares, who will give us a presentation about his successful attempt to climb all 247 peaks on the SPS list in a single season. As you will hear, he and his climbing partner, Nathan Longhurst, conceived the idea, planned the routes, and executed the plan in an astounding 138 days for Nathan and 117 days for Travis. They also managed to let us follow their progress on a great website they created that included blogs, photos, and real-time tracking. Although Travis was not a household name to us in Southern California climbing scene when we first started hearing about this project last year, he has embraced the history of the section and pushed the boundaries of what most of us thought was possible in a Sierra season. Reading about their extreme backcountry link-ups they did day after day made my head spin. Travis grew up in Rhode Island, attended college in Arizona, and he's become a prolific rock climber with ascents on El Capitan and a number of speed records on Sierra peaks. And while most of us in this room are peak baggers, Travis and other young guns have embraced the new ethos of achieving an FKT, or fastest known time for through hiking and climbing peaks, adding a new dimension of competition to the peak bagging game. We're thrilled to have Travis here tonight to present the story of how he was able to shatter all known and unknown fastest times to complete the full SPS list. So welcome, Travis. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going? First of all, I'd just like to state that it's an honor to be invited here, and I just feel that there's lots of energy and lots of people who really enjoy and love the Sierras, and it's just great to be in a room full of that many people. Because myself, I love the Sierras, and so it's just an honor to be among the legends of the mountain range. What is the Sierra Peak section list? Maybe this is a question I should be asking you all. But for those of y'all who are maybe new or just, or just in general, I figured I would just go over a little brief overview. You can go next. Okay. So the Sierras were created, the granite was formed underground millions of years ago and was uplifted about 5 million years ago and was heavily glaciated. And so that's how you get those sweeping ridge lines and just really impressive mountains and views. You can go next. All right. So this is Clarence King, who, funny story, grew up in Newport, Rhode Island, which is where he was born, and I was born in Barrington, Rhode Island, which is really close to that area, and I didn't know this until after I finished the list, but I went back and visited his gravesite and kind of paid my respects to him, who was kind of a leader in mapping the Sierras, and he was appointed the California Geological Surveyor position in 1860s. So he was really a pivotal figure in mapping out the Sierras and exploring it. And then of course John Muir came along a couple of years later, and he created the Sierra Club, which is the reason that we're all here, and just a beautiful thing to just, as you all know, to create a culture around the Sierras. And so they started doing trips in the outings, and then as they discovered more and more mountains, created the Sierra Peak section list. Wait, is that the next one? I think there's. So this is the Sierra Peak section list. In the 1950s, they created the list of 247 peaks, which is the peak number that we have now. We now think of when we think of Sierra Peak section list. And it's kind of crazy to see all the mountains out on one screen and see every single one is kind of mind-blowing. Yeah. So yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm from Rhode Island, and you can keep scrolling through. Yeah, and I grew up, I played sports, I ran cross country, and yeah, I was kind of like a weird kid who didn't want to wear shoes, and read lots of John Muir and didn't quite fit into my hometown. But my parents sent me to a Knowles course, and where I did a 28-day backpacking trip, and that totally blew my mind. And then I ended up going to school in Arizona at Prescott College, and that's me right there. And yeah, so from there I started to just really enjoy being outside. When I was 19, I hiked the Long Trail of Vermont, and I got into climbing. So I discovered climbing when I was about 18. Started from bouldering to just climbing bigger and bigger things, and climbing pretty much anything that I could find. Yeah, I just love climbing a lot. And then yeah, I found my way out into Yosemite and into the Sierras, and totally blew my mind. It was awesome, and climbed up Royal Arches and did everything wrong basically, but yeah, I was like, I knew that the Sierras were a really special place. And I'm sure a lot of people recognize this ridge right here. This was one of the first Sierra ridges that I got up on. This is the North Ridge of Kness. And yeah, so basically I took climbing from bouldering and just getting out and doing bigger and bigger things up in the mountains. And when I graduated from college, I just moved into my minivan, and had no money, but I just traveled around and was pretty set on exploring the world. Yeah, and so I started exploring the Sierras a little bit more and started doing fastest known times, which are just basically the speed records on certain peaks. And I really enjoyed that flow because it pushed my limits, and it was a good excuse just to like see what I could really do and push my limits and see what was possible. Not so much for competition, but more of with others, but competition with myself. Just a really great way to like really push myself, and moving really fast for me in the mountains demonstrates like a level of just like being in tune and like knowing where you're going, and like just it's a really great flow for me that I really enjoy. And so yeah, in October 2022 or 2021, sorry, this fellow Nathan reached out to me, and he said, hey, I have this idea of climbing the Sierra Peak section list in a single year. And he reached out to me because he knew that I'd been in the Sierras, and I was somewhat proficient. And so I was like, okay, I hadn't even heard of the Sierra Peak section list. And I looked into it, and yeah, I looked at the list, looked at at it on a map, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of mountains out there. You're like, yeah, I'll join you for this adventure and do my best, and at the very least figured it'd be a great way to explore the Sierras. So we met up in Red Rock, Nevada, and did some climbing. That's Nathan. And then we started planning. So in October we started planning, and I would start in April. And so we used CalTopo to map our routes, and all those blue dots are mountains, and all the squiggly lines are route plans. And so a lot of the times we just would hike in, set up a base camp, and do like little loops of peaks from there. And before we started, we had figured out the entire plan as much as we could. And when we were out there, of course, we had to change plans here and there, but using Sea Corps' guidebook, as I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, it came in pretty handy to just be able to like piece together ridge link-ups and mountain link-ups in general. So yeah, basically we started in the Whitney zone and did a huge loop around the entire range, going down south, and we created a website, and which had like some live tracking, which I know some people followed along with, and was just meant a lot for me to have family and friends be able to follow along. And so something that I wanted to do was give back to the community in some way. And so I met with the Bishop Paiute tribe elders and asked their permission to fundraise for them. They have a food sovereignty program in Bishop where they have their own ranch. They have a plot of land and they grow their own crops and are basically trying to seek food sovereignty from the U.S. government. And so we ended up raising $3,500-ish for them over the course of the whole project. And so Nathan started skiing in February, and since I'm too soft and afraid of the cold, I waited until April for the snow to start to melt, and then I joined him. And so this is us on day one. For me, we went out to go climb Thor Peak. We climbed up, I think it's called Stem Winder, something like that, but it's a route that goes up the face. It's a 5-4 route that was super fun, and a great way to start the whole project. And then from there, just continued along in the Whitney area. I think the next day we climbed. So since it was early in the season, we had to bike into the trailhead. Which added a little bit of extra multi-sport adventure. So we started with, after Thor, we camped out at the upper Boy Scout Lake and climbed Fishhookerette up on Mount Russell, which was really fun. One of my favorite climbs of the list. You can see me down there. Yeah. And from there we continued on to Tunabor and Carrion. And then we made camp. And then the next day we went out and continued in the Whitney area and climbed Whitney, Muir, Young, and Hale. We went up the east buttress of Whitney. Really awesome route. Yeah. And then the day after that we climbed Lone Pine, via the North Ridge, and that was one of the longer days. Lone Pine with, what are the peaks up there? You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so you can see our route. We climbed up. Yeah, so up the North Ridge of Lone Pine, over to LeConte, Corcoran, Mallory, and then Irvine, and that was one of the longer days. That was 13. That was Well, that's a total. So over the course of 4 days, we did 13 peaks, 42 miles, and 38K. And after that, I was like, whoa, what did I get myself into? I did not think I would finish. But we took a rest day and then headed back into the mountains. And so it snowed during our rest day, and we hiked up into Kearsarge Pass, and this is up on Mount Bago. Really beautiful little mountain out there. And climbed some peaks out there. Yeah. Yeah, so then one of the next big day was we climbed Mount Gardner with Clarence King and Mount Rixford. Or Gardner, Cotter, and Clarence King. And that ended up being about an 18-hour day because the snow was really, really thick. And we brought snowshoes, but even in snowshoes, we were just basically falling into the snow. And ended up having to hike up Glen Pass like at midnight, like totally tired, and we were like, what are we doing out here? But it was awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that's Nathan. That's the ridge on Gardner. A little bit snowy. And there's from the top of Cotter to Gardner. And that's the top of Clarence King. Yeah. And then, we just kept on climbing. We did Williamson, Trojan, Barnard, and Tyndall. Yeah. And we were just, out there having a good time. Yeah. We climbed up the face of Tyndall. It's called the Tyndall effect. It's a 5-6 route that we were passing by, and we were like, "Oh, that looks really fun." So we decided to go check it out. Ended up being a good one. Yeah, and then one of the bigger days that we did was Joe Devil, Pickering, Newcomb, Chamberlain, Hitchcock, and McAdie. Along the ridge line from Joe Devil. And when we were traversing from Joe Devil to Pickering, I was like walking along the ridge, and there was like snow on the rock, and I ended up slipping and hitting my rib on the rock, and like the wind was knocked out of me, and I ended up like sort of like cracking my rib. And it hurt really bad, and I wasn't able to sleep on my rib for like the next like 4 weeks. It was kind of a bummer. Yeah. Does anyone know what the summit block this is? It's on Cirque. It's one of the coolest summit blocks. It's the little bench. Yeah. And we found some cool boulder problems too while we were up there. Yeah, and so basically from that whole area, we started heading south into the Southern Sierras. And as you all know, the Southern Sierras kind of have their own character, and from the High Sierra. And so I think that's this is on top of Sawtooth, looking over to Lamont Peak. We climbed Spanish, Lamont, Sawtooth, and kept working our way south. So since we were there in the early season, we had to bike to a lot of the trailheads because the roads were closed. Probably did like 100 or so miles of biking total to get to the trailheads. And even that was a little adventurous. Yeah. Yep. And so this is on Sirietta Peak. So we noticed that the GPX track that you climb Sirietta Peak makes a half heart. And since it was around Mother's Day, we decided to complete the track. And we had to bushwhack like off into nothing. But we made a nice little heart and sent it to our mothers. Yeah. Yeah, and we just continued along south. This is on Moses. Really surprisingly fun ridge. With the giant sequoias down there. This looks like a fish, I thought. Yeah. And that was around the point where we were probably starting to go crazy. Can anyone guess what peak this is on? It's the bushwhack of the list. Homer's nose. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fun one. Oh, really? Dang, we missed it. Yeah. And so, at this point, we got 52 peaks in, about 28 days, and definitely starting to feel the fatigue about a month in. But the Southern Sierra was a great break, and by the time we were kind of done with the Southern Sierra, I was ready to get back into the big mountains again. So we went into the Great Western Divide. We hiked in down to the canyon. The Whaleback Canyon, and climbed North Guard, Brewer, South Guard, Thunder, and Table in one day, which ended up being one of the longer days. It was like maybe 19 hours. Yeah. Yeah. There's Thunder, really beautiful peak. Yeah. And that's on top of Table at night, at like 10:30 at night. And Whaleback, yeah, of course. Super beautiful mountain. We climbed the ridge, the North Ridge. There's the blowhole that we descended through. Yeah, this is on Picket Guard, which is a really cool peak. We had a nice sunset up there. Does anyone know what peak this is? Yeah, Black Coulee, yeah. Definitely, I think, one of the more rugged peaks of the list. We climbed up the West Ridge and down the East Ridge and linked it up into Red Coulee, and then went over to Mount Coulee. Yeah, there's Black Coulee in the background. We found the airplane crash. Yeah, I'm sure y'all have found some of those out there. There's some mountain lion prints over by Spanish Mountain. Somebody broke this poor aspen's heart. It's a bleeding heart. And yeah, at this point we were like, oh, we're totally done, like post-holing. And then every once in a while you'd like really fall in. So yeah, at this point I was almost at 100 peaks, and we headed out to Yosemite. Does anyone know what peak this is? It's a weird angle, but it's very iconic. It looks like Star King, but it's actually Half Dome. Yeah, this is the approach up Snake Dyke, which we climbed up Snake Dyke. Took some touristy pictures up on Cloud's Rest. And then we did we climbed the peaks up in the high country of Yosemite. That was on Mount Rogers, and we climbed Lyle, McClure, Rogers, and Electra. That was Mount Clark up there. So Star King, funny story. We went out to go climb Star King, and it was at the end of like a 5-day trip. And as you all know, Star King is pretty technical. It's rated 5th class, like 5.2 or something. we decided not to bring rock climbing shoes for it because Nathan and I are typically pretty comfortable climbing rock up to like 5-6 terrain in our ultras. And so we're like, oh yeah, like Starking, like should be chill. And then we got up there and started climbing, and we're like, whoa, this is really scary. What were we thinking? And so we hiked around to the north side and decided to climb up the 5-0 route, which ended up being crack, but with lots of grass. And so it was kind of like you get a hand jam, and then you grab the grass and hope it holds, pull on it really gingerly. And so we almost got shut down by Starking, but we ended up getting to the top with our tails between our legs. Yeah. Yep. That's on Mount Conness. We climbed Cathedral under the full moon. We climbed up the buttress, the 5-6 buttress, and the full moon. It was really beautiful. The moon lit up all the quartz crystals, and the face was just this pearly white, like, yeah. And so I went up into Tahoe and climbed all the peaks up in Tahoe.
Why didn't he join you?
He had already done them.
Oh, he already
Yeah,
did.
yeah. And so Nathan was kind of just like waiting for me to come back and join him
Okay.
for what would be the longest backcountry trip of the whole expedition. So we headed into the evolutions, and our goal over the course of 12 days was to climb all the evolution peaks and link it into the Palisade peaks. And this was probably the toughest link up of the whole trip. Every day ended up being around like at least 12 hours up to like 16 hours of just moving and not getting back to camp until pretty late. But as you all know, the evolutions are just super magical. Yeah. So that's the Hermit Summit block. And we had to do a buddy climb for that one. I stood on Nathan's shoulders. That's the evolution traverse. Mendel, Darwin, Haeckel, Wallace, Fisk, and Huxley. We camped below Huxley and did the traverse. Yeah. Yeah. This is the 248th peak of the list. Yeah. Nathan's family came out and they brought us in some food, and then they ended up climbing a peak with us, which was really cool. That's a really crazy rock that I found. And so, yeah, from the evolutions, we headed into the Palisades, which would prove to be maybe the most difficult mountains of the list for us. And then they're on the back. Yeah, so as you can see, that's from the top of Gailey, or from the top of Temple, and you can see Gailey. Wait, maybe this is from the top of Gailey. You can see Sill, and then the whole northern Palisade, North Pal, Thunderbolt, and then in the southern section, Palisades Crest, Norman Clyde. So we split up the Palisades into 2 days. Was our goal to do them both, to the whole Palisades. So the first day we set out to go climb Palisade Crest, Norman Clyde Peak, Middle Pal, Disappointment, and the Thumb, all along the ridge, starting from the car. And so we headed out, and it was super fun, awesome climbing. Palisade Crest was really beautiful. Yeah, and we wanted to descend off of South Fork Pass, which I don't know if any of y'all have been down before, but we got down there. You can keep going. So here's a picture of the pass, because we had heard that the pass went pretty reasonably at like class 2 or class 3, according to Secor, and we were there pretty late in the season, and it was around midnight, and we started descending down the pass, and it just became, it was dirt, and got steeper dirt into like a cliff of dirt. There was absolutely no snow or ice to down climb, and it was like really late in the day, and we had been like on the move at this point for like 18-ish hours. And so we had to hike back up South Fork Pass and plant and camp out. We had an unplanned night out where we ended up cuddling together just to stay warm, and had to bail the next day. We had to climb back up the thumb and out to Birch Trailhead with like no food, and it was definitely a little bit of a struggle, but we were very humbled and learned our lesson after that. Yeah. So once we got picked up, we went and got some pizza and went to sleep, and then the next day we woke up for the Northern Palisades, and we climbed up Venusian Blind, up Temple Crag, which goes straight up the, that's right here. And then from the top of Temple, we traversed over to Gailey, Sill, North Powell, Thunderbolt, Winchell, and Agassiz. And so Agassiz was the last peak for Nathan, and he would become the first person to complete the entire SPS list in under a year on top of Agassiz. And he completed it with a time of 138 days. And so I was really proud of him, and the whole day I was like trying to support him to the end. And it was a tough day, but we just were cruising, and yeah. So funny story, we got to Thunderbolt, and we were like, yeah, we'll be able to like climb it, like we're both rock climbers, like, and got up there, and I tried the moves, and I was like, got really scared. I was like, whoa, this is hard. Nathan was like, Travis, dude, like, come on, it can't be that hard. And he hopped on it, and he like did some of the moves. He's like, whoa, like that's hard. And thankfully we did bring a rope just in case, and so we tried like wrangling the summit block as most people do, and we were just like apparently awful cowboys. We should never ever go into that field of work, and we just could not figure out how to wrangle it, and it was getting late, and we still had to climb Winchell and Agassiz. We were like, man, like this is taking forever. And Nathan was like, dude, like forget about it, like let's just not climb to the top. And I was like, we have to do this. And he was like, all right, fine. And so we ended up coming with the idea of strapping our trekking poles together and putting a carabiner on the top of the trekking pole and leaving it open and tying a rope to the carabiner and stick clipping the anchor. And so we stick clipped the top and then shimmied up the rope and got up to the top. Yeah, we climbed it. Yeah. And that's the top of Agassiz, with a bunch of our friends came out and met us, and they brought us some snacks. And then I was alone. I had about 73 peaks left to go. And I just kept on chugging away. Oh, so Mount Warren, as I'm sure some of y'all know, there's a classic story of Bob Bird getting struck by lightning up there. And it turns out that I would also climb Mount Warren in a thunderstorm, and it was chasing me. I saw that it would hit around 4 o'clock. It was still like 1 o'clock, so I was like, I think I'll be able to beat it. And so I was just chugging up Mount Warren, and like kept looking behind me and seeing the thunderstorm coming over, like looming over Mount Dana. And I was like, oh man, it's coming. And sure enough, it hit me. It was above me, not the lightning. The storm was above me and got to the top of Mount Warren. And for some reason, there's a giant metal lightning conductor on the summit of that mountain. I don't understand. And thankfully, I just tagged the summit and headed back down and was totally safe. And as soon as I got back down among the trees, like the sun came out and it was all fine. Yeah. That's Miriam Peak. So yeah, I went out and climbed Miriam. Nathan came out and joined me for this one, even though he had climbed it before, and we roped up for the buttress, the northwest buttress. And that's Mount Humphreys. So yeah, at this point, I had maybe like 20 or so peaks left, and every day was basically like a thunderstorm was forecasted in the afternoon, and so I had to get up really early and try to get off of the tops of the mountains before the thunderstorms hit. So that's a really nice cave that I found. 5-star cave, would recommend. With an incredible beachfront view. Yeah. So yeah. In high school, I'd read a lot of John Muir, and that's what first sort of like tickled my fancy about the Sierras, was reading his stories. And there's a famous story of him climbing Mount Ritter, going up the north side of Mount Ritter. And so I always knew like someday I wanted to climb Mount Ritter. In 2022, in the summer of 2022, I went out to go climb it, and I got to the base of it, and just didn't feel right. I kind of just sat down at the base of Mount Ritter and was like, I'm just gonna sit here and like stare at it, and which is what I did. And then I headed back, and I wasn't really sure why I felt such a strong emotion just to not climb it and sit there until I planned the list in such a way that Ritter would be one of my final peak link-ups. And yeah, and so one of the last days was climbing Clyde Minaret, linking it with Mount Ritter, Banner Peak, and Mount Davis. And so yeah, I set out to go do that. There's Clyde Minaret, and it was just a crazy day because I was just taking it one day at a time, not really thinking about finishing the list, and didn't even think it was possible until this one day when I was actually confronted with finishing and being at 246 at the end of this day. And it was just a really magical moment. There's Mount Ritter and Banner, and there's Ritter from Banner. There's some glacier water, which I gathered, and gave some to my family. Delicious, yeah. And that's on top of Mount Davis. And so I had one more peak left, San Joaquin, and so my family flew out to Mammoth and joined me for the final peak. And I was really proud of them that they came from sea level and were able to get to the top. It was just really awesome way to finish the whole experience. And yeah, so I finished with a time of 117 days, 8 hours, 34 minutes. The total stats at the end was around 1,900 miles, and then 730,000 feet of gain. And so just one last thing I would like to say is that, like, of course, like, the time is, I guess, fast or whatever, but my main objective was just to, like, be in this, like, immersive experience of, like, being in the Sierras every single day, all day, like was a total dream for me. And like even if I hadn't gotten a time, or like there was no time attached to the effort, like I would do it all over again in a second. And I think what I really wanted to demonstrate with this feat is just just if you really like love something and you can like go out and do it, and you have the time and energy, and like you can go to some really amazing places. And just like I don't know, I don't have words to really describe, but I think whatever it is like people do, like just stay present, like be present, and take life one at a time. There's lots of joy in like the little things out there in the mountains, and those are the experiences that will last with us forever, as I'm sure you all know. Again, thanks for inviting me here, and I would love to answer if there's any questions that people have. Yeah, Mary.
I have two questions. What's your favorite peak and what's your next objective?
That's a great question. Favorite peak? That's a great question. I really liked Mount Bago. It was a beautiful view down there, and like you can see the canyon, and I don't know. Mount Bago was a really special peak, even though it's small and it's like not super grand. You feel like you're in the mountains. I like that one. Next objective, I'm currently like locating to Flagstaff and hoping to explore the Grand Canyon a little bit, and so maybe check out the Grand Canyon a little bit more. Yeah.
Hi, I wanted to ask you what type of filter did you use for the water, and also did you have actual meals or mostly snacks?
Yeah, that's a good question. What kind of filter did I use? The answer is my gut, I guess. And what kind of food? Lots of Oreos. It was a little obscene how many Oreos I could eat in a single sitting. Literally, like, you would be disgusted. Like a whole family-sized pack I could demolish in an hour and then be hungry like an hour later. Lots of Oreos and mac and cheese and oatmeal and instant potatoes. Yeah.
This is such an achievement, and one of the things, it was great following you on the website, and I kept thinking, how do they have the energy to report and record everything, and so beautifully? So anyway, I just wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we would write trip reports in our free time at the end of the day. Thankfully we had a friend of ours who was kind of like taking care of the website, and we would just send him pictures and send him the trip report, and he would upload it.
That's great.
Yeah, in the back.
Could you talk a little bit about your navigation and how you handle mapping, maps and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we use CalTopo to do a lot of the planning, and then I also use Gaia when I'm out there, and it just is an incredible tool to like follow a specific route and show you where you are at all times. It's kind of crazy, I think it's funny how you all think this is impressive, but like I have the benefit of this like crazy technology. It feels like cheating. Like I know, like a certain amount of years ago there was just maps and compass, which makes it way harder. And I have the benefit of using a phone to know exactly where I am at all times. And so I think it's interesting, how technology like can actually like impact like the evolution of mountain climbing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so you must have gone pretty light. What did you use for sleeping?
Yeah, I would use a small little sleeping pad, and I have like a lightweight 0-degree quilt that I use. And sorry.
You're in the vein of John Muir. He just takes a blanket with him.
Yeah, exactly. And a pretty small little backpack, and a tent as well. Yeah.
So what did you study in college, and what did you do for a living?
I studied adventure education and wilderness leadership, and so at the school that I went to, Prescott College, basically we actually went out to the Sierras, and climbing Kness was through school. They taught us how to like climb, how to whitewater raft, backcountry ski, and basically be like fluent in outdoor activities and also be safe. And so basically to learn skills that you can become a guide. And so I do a little bit of guiding, mostly backpacking. Yeah. Yeah.
How many 0 days did you take?
I think about eight total 0 days. But the thing is, the 0 days actually ended up being more stressful than when I was out in the mountains, because I'd have to like do laundry and like clean my van and all the things that I had to do in town, and just wouldn't want to be in town but would need food. And so they're good for the body, but they weren't super restful. Yeah.
How did you get resupply?
There was just some towns along the way, and if we knew we would be like away from a town for like 2 weeks, so we would just buy 2 weeks worth of food. Yeah.
Well, how many of the peaks did you day hike versus overnight?
That's a good question. I'd probably say about 50%, maybe 40% we did car to car, and maybe 60% was from the backcountry. Yeah. Yeah.
You had one slide there that looked like it was either smoke or fog. What was it?
Oh, I think that was on Mount Rogers, on the ridge line. Yeah, a storm came through while we were on Mount Rogers on that like 4th class ridge line, and it started like hailing on us, and we just got totally socked in by a cloud. And it was, kind of crazy.
Did you have any problems with wildfires?
Yeah, so the reason I started in April was to try to avoid the fire season, which this season ended up being, we got really lucky that there weren't any really major fires. But so we wanted to do all the southern peaks as soon as we could, so we did those really early on. And then that's why I separated from Nathan and went out and did all the peaks in Tahoe as soon as I could. Because the Tahoe peaks and the Southern Sierra are like the most fire prone. And so we just tried to get those done right away, and ended up, there was no big issues. There was like a fire closure for like Angora and Coyote, where we wanted to access them, but we just accessed them from Mineral King area. Yeah. Yo.
Can you just talk about, I remember the last time you gave a presentation, you talked about like in the Palisades with the rock that like threw the thing and it fell?
Yeah, that was on Black Kauai. Yeah. One of the closest calls that we had, I guess, was out in Black Kauai, heading down from the East Ridge. I was down climbing ahead of Nathan, and there was like a loose rock the size of like a laptop-ish, maybe a little bit bigger, and I was like, kind of in my head, I was like, yeah, I'll just trundle this. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to trundle this. Then I was like, yeah, I'm going to trundle this. And yeah, I trundled it, and it hit the ledge that I was about to step down onto. And as soon as it hit the ledge, the entire ledge just totally like disintegrated. It's basically like watching like a dump truck dump a bunch of rocks out of its bed and just cascade down the mountains and left like a huge like scar on the mountain. And Nathan and I were like, yeah, that was a wake up call for y'all who have been in the Kauai's. You know, like that's pretty dangerous and loose out there in that range. Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, Tom, belaying on one of the climbs. How often did you belay on the field?
We brought a rope during the Palisades, but only used it on the Thunderbolt section. And then other than that, we didn't use any ropes. Oh, other than we climbed Miriam Peak via the northwest buttress, but we used ropes on that because it's like 511B and pretty hard. But other than that, we didn't use any ropes.
Fish hook or that?
Not on a fish hook, no. Yeah. How many mountains? Ever? Ever? Probably 248. Never, no more. Yeah.
I'm sure you did a lot of planning ahead of time to figure out what peaks you're going to do, which way you were going to go. I mean, how close were you on plan? Or did you have to make a lot of adjustments along the way? Or
Yeah, we stuck to the plan pretty much. Pretty much every plan was pretty spot on. There were like small, minor adjustments we'd have to do here and there. Like I think like the 4th class ridge on McAdie was looked really gross, and so we went up the 3rd class gully. Just like small adjustments like that, but we pretty much went out and completed like every single link up that we had planned out for. And we were pretty lucky that it all worked out.
you didn't have too much trouble with the weather?
No, we would either just like wait out the thunderstorm or like get up a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Were you using backcountry skis?
I didn't use any skis, but Nathan skied about 70 peaks. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
So we're both wearing trail runners and
Mhm.
why on such technical terrain?
That's a good question. I don't know. Nathan somehow convinced me to use trail runners. Yeah, I think just because when we were hiking, I used trail runners, and so I didn't want to carry the extra weight of rock climbing shoes. So I think it's just, maybe efficiency, and then just getting comfortable in technical terrain and the trail runners over time. It's kind of like figured I didn't need to bring rock climbing shoes, but obviously paid the price a couple times. But yeah.
So on fish hook, you were just in
We actually brought shoes for that. That one we brought shoes for. Yeah.
How many pairs of shoes you go through?
I think about 7.5. Yeah, this is the half pair right here. Yeah. I haven't quite retired these yet. Yeah.
Despite the Oreos, did you lose weight on the
Yeah, I lost weight, maybe about like 15 pounds in the beginning. But then my body like sort of adjusted, and I got back to like a pretty normal weight. Yeah. And then afterwards I like gained like 15 pounds. Because my appetite was still there, but I wasn't moving. Yeah.
You used ropes on the 511, but it looked to me like you did quite a bit of rock climbing. I mean, it looked like very difficult climbing. What were the readings though? You were not using ropes, and what reading were you climbing?
Yeah, Nathan and I feel pretty comfortable without ropes up to like 5'8", 5'9". And so yeah, basically anything higher than that we would use ropes, but most of it like was maybe like 5'8", fifth class to 5-6. Like we didn't encounter too much of technical terrain other than on the southern Palisades. There were definitely some moves on that traverse that were like maybe 5-8-ish and like a little technical, but yeah, for the most part it was like pretty more like easier climbing. Yeah.
Did you do any training before you started the adventure, like working up to this? Expecting, when you were planning and like trying to up your miles prior to starting the adventure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually did the opposite. Yeah, I actually went down to Baja with my friends and just sat on the beach and surfed and drank beer and ate food. Because when you're out for that long, like your body is just going to get strong on its own. So I actually figured it would be more beneficial just to like rest as much as I could and make sure I was like fully well rested before setting off. And basically like my whole life, I feel like I've been sort of training up for this, like skill wise. So all the skills were there, and I just need to like rest my body and make sure it would be able to last 4 months.
Did Nathan take the same approach?
No, he never stopped. Even after he finished, he was out like climbing mountains. Yeah. Yeah.
Were you guys always going for the easiest route, or you picked the more interesting one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think to keep us like psyched and like interested, we would oftentimes go up like a fifth class route if we had the option, just because it was fun and kept our like morale high. And sometimes it would be like a great way to link some mountains too. But yeah.
So how did your appreciation of the range change from what you expected to what you found and thought about afterwards?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I guess like I didn't know the Sierra super well before this project, and I climbed Mount Whitney like a couple years ago. I remember getting to the top and like not really knowing the names of the different peaks. But then since we started with Mount Whitney, I got that view again, and after like having looked on the map, like I was like, oh, I think I like recognize some of those peaks. I know some of the names. And then, you can see Mount Whitney from a lot of the different mountains, and so down in the Southern Sierra, we would like maybe be able to see it a little bit, and the Western Divine see it, and like slowly it felt like this puzzle was like being put together, and be like, oh, that's that, and like just seeing like all the different high points from different places in like one continuous effort was like really special, and just felt like it started to feel like home, like when we were out there, and like when we were out in the towns, it would be like, are we supposed to talk to people? Like, what do we say? Like, people are so weird, and it just like became like our place. So we just felt comfortable and safe, and that was really special. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, he called me. He was like, I can't believe you broke my record, man. Like, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, he was so supportive. Like, we were both supportive of each other. And, yeah, we're definitely really good friends. Like, the bond that we created is, like, just a really, really strong bond. And we got along really well. And hopefully going to do some other stuff in the future together. Yeah.
Especially given, like, the link-up routes you guys did a lot. Did you encounter other climbers very often?
We didn't see anybody really from April to May. Yeah, and then once the snow started to melt out, we started to see more people. But yeah, we didn't see too many people out there until like the summer. Yeah.
Travis, you made a lot of wonderful memories, and it's very, very impressive. But one thing you said, you and Nathan are bonded.
Mm-hmm.
You're young and full of vitality and vigor and a whole lot more. But one day, catch up. So whatever you do, hang on to that bond with Nathan, because one day you'll sit in a room like this and you'll remember. And it's wonderful to see young blood coming into the Sierra Club, so keep it up.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, that seems like a perfect place to kind of wrap up. And yeah, again, I would just like to say, like, thank you all so much. Like, I really appreciate everyone, like, you all inviting me here. And, like, it's truly an honor to be among the legends. People who have climbed the list multiple times, people working on the list. Yeah. People who have climbed the list multiple times, climbing Clarence King Summit Block multiple times. That's insane. But yeah, just like really appreciate it, and I hope this community, thanks for inviting me into this community. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Hope you all have a great, safe Sierra season for 2023, and we'll see you again next year.